Hi, everyone. People are filtering in. Thank you for joining another Ask Agritecture Anything webinar. We're happy you're here. Our webinars are really intended to share knowledge with you across Agritecture Designer, our software, but also what we do at Agritecture more broadly and some of our partners. So we're excited you're here. It'd be really helpful if you could just put in the chat where you're located or anything you want to share about you or your organization. It'd be great to hear from you. I'm Henry Gordon-Smith, the founder and CEO of Agritecture. And my job is to sort of steer the ship of Agritecture and help us move forward with our mission, which is to accelerate the transition to climate smart agriculture. And we consider greenhouses and vertical farms and container farms all part of that. Okay, so we've got Juan from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining, Juan. Hope you all are comfortable. If you're enjoying lunch in the East Coast, bon appetit. Anybody else want to share where they're from? Okay. Root of the Matter. What a cool name. Thanks for joining, Contessa. We appreciate you being here. Okay, anyone else here? I see Derek. Derek, we can allow you to talk in a moment. I see you raised your hand. We can get to that. We'll get into some questions. Yeah, Singapore in the house. Hi, Earl and Francisco from Houston. Guten Tag, Richard from Deutschland. A nice mix of people from around the world. That's great. Okay, so as was mentioned, I'm Henry Gordon-Smith and I lead Agritecture, and we really are excited to continue to do our part through 3 parts of our organization to help others navigate the sector. So the first part, just to give you some background, is our blog and content platform, which you can find at agritecture.com. We post a lot of content about urban agriculture, local food systems, controlled environment agriculture, and we strive to be a really honest, forward-thinking blog and content platform. But there's a lot of other resources on there. We have research articles, and we have some of our past reports, like our censuses that we've done, or we have our popular events page where you can learn about all the upcoming events and webinars that we recommend. So definitely take a look at that. Now, the second part of the business is our consulting practice. That's Agritecture Consulting. This is where we help entrepreneurs, corporations, investors, and governments looking to understand urban agriculture, controlled environment agriculture. And so they hire us as consultants, and we build dedicated teams and we help them execute that. So things like feasibility studies or due diligence for investors, or the comprehensive urban agriculture plan that we just finished for the city of Dallas. So that's just to highlight some of the range of those services, which you can also learn about on our website or Ask Me Anything today. But number 3 is what we're really focused on, which is Agritecture Designer. Now, this is our little pet project that's grown quite a bit in recent years. It's our vision for planning these farms in the future. Essentially, when I was getting started, it was very difficult to get the basic data about how vertical farms or greenhouses perform, what crops to grow, what their yields might be, and the various economic considerations of that. So years later, since I started my blog in 2011, we've built the world's first farm planning software, and that's Agritecture Designer. And so this is a software that allows you to basically model out any greenhouse or vertical farm or container farm in the world, get education on some of the best practices for developing these farms, help you identify the right pricing for your crops in your market, and many more features. One of the features I wanted to highlight today, this is what it looks like when you log in, is our partner network. So the idea is that after you finish a plan, which I'll just show you quickly what that looks like. So after you finish a model for a farm, you get a snapshot like this. So the idea is you do multiple ones of these, and then as you sort of narrow down to one you like, you can contact us, and specifically Luke from my team, and start to connect with some of our partners. So our partners are broken down between equipment, financing, and service partners. And service partners are our newest category. So equipment partners provide various supplies, greenhouses, vertical farming systems, irrigation systems, etc. And these partners are ready to go. They are ready to solve your problems, to sell you the equipment, and to help you install that equipment. And look, here is iFarm, one of our amazing partners we've worked with before. And so you can actually look at the profile of iFarm as an example. You can see when they were founded. You can learn a little bit more about their technology, but Lucky for you, we have iFarm on the call today, so we're going to hear from them a little bit, hear about their value proposition, and you can go a little bit deeper. Like, is this a good fit for you based on your minimum size of budget, various aspects of their customer service, and what their commitments to sustainability are. So we're trying to really showcase and standardize what these suppliers are providing, as well as creating a really strong bridge. As I mentioned, Luke has been on some of these calls before. He's our client success manager. So his job, as long as you're an Agritecture Designer customer, means like you just subscribe. His job is to connect you with whatever suppliers possible, help facilitate that process, and be a bridge between you and the supplier to essentially make sure that you get the right equipment, the right pricing, etc. So you can just directly connect with Luke through the platform and contact him, and he'll set you up and help you out with those things. As I mentioned, in addition to equipment partners, we have some financing partners in the United States. Things like project financing, grant financing, crowdfunding, and we intend to expand that a lot more. And then our service providers, we invite you to look at those. These are our new range of service providers. One of them includes Photosynthetic by Rift Labs. This is basically on-demand R&D for indoor vertical farming. So if you don't want to build a R&D facility as part of your vertical farm or your greenhouse, Photosynthetic by Rift Labs will actually do that for you. You can pay them a monthly fee to set up a dedicated research project within, which we think is pretty cool. So as I wrap up this part and move on to my colleague Timo, who's joining us from iFarm, I just want to highlight one part of this. Again, we try to get people the most accurate information at the low cost as possible through the farm modeling parts of the software, as well as other guiding aspects like the classes that teach you what technologies to consider, or the crop pricing tool, which teaches you which price to select at. But then after that, we really want to connect you to a supplier. So we had one customer of our software, Khalid Shoker, who used our software to model out his farms, do his market research, and then he contacted us to connect with suppliers. We connected him with 4 suppliers, one of which is iFarm, which is on the call today. And then they actually went ahead and built their farm. And you can learn more about Butter Farms by checking out their website. But iFarm successfully delivered the equipment to that farm, installed it. I myself got to see the farm in person and see how the family is growing various microgreens and herbs in Saudi Arabia's largest vertical farm, and what I think is the first commercial vertical farm in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. So pretty exciting impact, and just a really great collaboration that happened between iFarm, Agritecture, and Butter Farms. Again, Butter Farms got to plan this farm using our software at a fraction of the cost of consulting. So it was a huge win for them. iFarm got a qualified lead with the business plan. And so everybody sort of wins in this situation. So we really are excited about this new model for planning these farms. And we're excited about you to ask us what you want to know about it so that we can continue to guide you in the right direction. So with that, I'm just going to check the chat for one moment here and see if there's any questions, but we can get into introducing you a little bit, Timo. Timo, I know you've had a long day. How are you doing?
Thanks, Henry. I'm doing okay. So yeah, good day everyone on that side of the Atlantic. So I'm calling from Helsinki, Finland, in Northern Europe, and good evening or afternoon to everyone in Europe. And if there is anyone dialing in from Asia Pacific, then it's hats off. You know, I really appreciate your commitment and to the cause. Yeah, so my name is Timo. I work as a VP sales for iFarm, and as I said, located here in Northern Europe, Helsinki, Finland. And I thought I would tell you a bit about the iFarm, what we do, and so on. And really, you know, I want to highlight or take the opportunity to highlight and thanks Henry and the Agritecture team, because the cooperation with Khalid in Saudi Arabia has been really a nice one, and we've been very happy with the way the whole thing has been done and delivered. We still have the second half of his farm to be constructed. He's actually learning while he's growing, so he now wants more baby leaves and microgreens than what was the original plan. So we will need to do some minor adjustments to his second farm. But if I very briefly show you a couple of slides, what we do and who we are and so on. So maybe that will give you a bit of a picture about iFarm. So we actually work on 3 areas as well. So we we design farms, we produce hardware for the farms, but our core product is the vertical farming software called iFarm GrowTune. And iFarm GrowTune actually does 4 things for the farmer. So the first thing is that it contains the growth recipe of approximately 220 plants to date. And the second thing is that the software actually then applies the recipe to your farm. So it adjusts the parameters depending on what you're growing and what is the need of the plant. So all the CO2 levels, the nutrition and things like that, they are automatically adjusted by the software. The third thing the software does is actually production planning. So you tell the software that I want to grow whatever 500 pounds or kilos of basil, and I want to have it ready on June 12th. The software computes back if you have the space and time to do it. It suggests you some timings, you approve it, and then it goes into your production planning. And the software keeps on reminding you that this is the task to be done so that you will have exactly 500 pounds of basil on June 12th or whatever the date was. And we also use different kind of QR codes and things to help you identify what's growing in the farm, in which areas, these virtual maps of your plantings. And this is actually very good help for you when it comes to the capacity utilization of your farms. So we've had some cases where the vertical farm has been running with the 80 to 83% capacity, and after switching to GrowTune, their capacity usage has gone to 99+%, which is then clearly a kind of a 20% increase on your total productivity without spending a penny more in your hardware. And yeah, one big part of this is of course the agrotechnology. So we're using eight of our own R&D farms to develop the recipes for our plant crops. They are in the fields of leafy greens, herbs, microgreens, baby leaves, vegetables like tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers, and strawberries. So this is what we currently have, but on top of that, we're working on a bit more exotic things like wasabi and so on, which are then further down the development pipeline later on. We use artificial intelligence and computer vision to identify the best plant recipes. So the computer is constantly checking some small deviations and variations in the recipe. And if the results are good, then they get incorporated into the recipe, updated recipe, and the updated recipe will then be sent to our farming customers around the world. When it comes to the farm sizes, I think the smallest farm size we have so far constructed for our clients is like 11 square meters. So that's like 100 square feet or 120 square feet. And this is an R&D laboratory for one very well-known cosmetics giant in France, where they do some R&D work for the cosmetic plants that they will then later on use in their facial creams and things like that. And at the other end, we are now currently designing a farm which we believe is the biggest fully automated farm in the world. It will be located in Mexico. It has a floor area or the growing surface of about 38,500 square meters, which equals to something like 400,000 square feet. So it's a fairly sizable farm. And in that farm, we're using a technology called iFarm StackGrow. I can quickly show you how it works in a second. What else? Yes, so we have a team of approximately 40 people working on the engineering and let's say the recipe development part. So we're fairly active in that area. Sorry, I'm just flying through these so that there is enough time for some discussions. And yeah, we experiment with crops like strawberries, and there we've been trying different types of technologies ranging from aeroponics to different versions of hydroponics using pollination methods from cotton pigs to bumblebees. And actually we did end up choosing the bumblebees because they are by far the best ones for the job. And so on. So we run constantly, hundreds and hundreds of tests and experiments that will then automatically will be shipped to our customers who are using our technologies. Yeah, but now I will just quickly show you the other one. Just 1 second. Let's see if I can switch. Yes. Okay, does this work now? No, sorry. I need to close this and
there you go.
Okay. Sorry, it's lost it. 1 second, I will
No problem, Timo.
return it in a second. Yeah. Here we go now. Sorry for that. Okay, so this is a kind of a highly simplified picture of our iFarm StackGrow automated system that we will use, for example, in the Mexican farm. So the whole process starts from this machine, which then adds the substrate to these trays. In reality, these trays are about 4 meters long, which is about 13 feet. As a substrate, we normally use either rock wool cubes or then these organic plugs. So no longer peat or cocoa fiber or things like that. So the machine fills the substrate in the trays. Then the next machine is a seeding machine that adds the right amount of seeds into the cups or the substrate. And then the conveyor belt takes the trays to the lift that then hoists the tray onto the right layer where other plants of that similar crop type are growing. And these layers or levels are actually gigantic conveyor belts, which slowly move towards the other end as the plants are growing. And the computer is automatically adjusting the spacing between the plants, because when they are very small, we can have a very high plant density per square meter or square feet. But as they grow, in order to avoid the leaf abrasion, the computer gives them more space so that the plants do not touch each other. When they're ready, the lift brings them down to the harvesting and packaging station. Then the trays with still the substrate and the roots inside are then taken to a washing machine. The machine washes them, the trays empties them, disinfects them, and they are returned to production. And all of this is controlled through our GrowTune software. And we also manufacture this in-house nutrient mixer, which uses very much nutrients on an element level, so magnesium, calcium, and so on, so that the computer can only use one irrigation system to all the plants, even though the recipes are different from each other. We manufacture practically everything else except the green boxes ourselves. So the green boxes are very much coming from another Agritecture partner, TTA, who is very advanced in the automation for the farm. So we are cooperating with them when it comes to the different machinery that will be needed in the line of production. So this is the, let's say, the latest technology what we have for vertical farming, leafy greens. Unfortunately, this does not apply for vegetables or strawberries, because those plants you're actually kind of utilizing for a longer period, because you harvest the berries and cucumbers individually. So there is absolutely no need to move the plants anywhere when you're growing them. That was iFarm in a very, very few minutes. So I guess this still leaves us plenty of time for questions and discussions.
Yeah, thank you, Timo. That was an excellent presentation. It's great to see the number of projects you've worked on, but also that there's hardware and software solutions. And of course, thanks for highlighting. It's great to see two partners working together. Yeah, TTA has some really impressive automation solutions as well. So, you know, the way we like to run these, I may have some questions for Timo to kick things off, but the way we like to run these are pretty intimate, right? It's not a huge group. So we want to create a lot of access that you can speak to Timo or myself and ask questions. We got a list of questions from Earl, so I'll start with those and see what we can do to answer those very specific questions. But if you want to raise your hand, I will allow you to talk and we can have a conversation about your questions, whatever they may be. Again, they don't have to be limited to what we've just talked about. We are really here trying to create open access to give you support and knowledge and to help guide you at least in the right direction for your next step. Earl, do you want to ask your questions live or do you want me just to attempt to answer some of them here? Okay, so your first question is about we're basically effluent from the farms, right? So when you produce crops and then you have a little bit of leftover water that has fertilizer in it, and there can be some considerations about putting that into waste streams. So is there an easier way to neutralize? I don't know the way you're doing it now, so I can't really speak to see if it's easier, Earl. And really, to me, it depends on the size of your farm and if you're more urban or not. But I guess I've seen some groups sort of having natural areas outside of their property where they can sort of create, sort of beds of greenery that can manage that water and slow it down before it goes in the system. But I think, that is probably the most natural way to do it. If you do have some property and space, you can do a bit of a landscaping solution there. Of course, you really want to test that. There have been companies that have been fined, including Bright Farms, for putting too much of that effluent into the municipal waste stream. So it is a problem. But again, I would need to know more about how you're doing it. Question number 2 is a very detailed question. The answer is no, I don't provide that list. If you want to talk to us about a consulting relationship to get you that information, or if you want to look at some research articles, you can get that, but that's not something I can provide you right now or free of charge. It's a pretty extensive question. And then number 3, it'd be great to hear from you, Earl, again, about your business, because I would like to give you advice on 3, how you can differentiate from your local competitors. But overall, differentiation, is about, first of all, understanding what they're doing, right? So I would create a bit of a map, okay, like an axis map of all the farms that you feel like are your competitors, and you can put different things on the axis. You can put like closer to the consumer as one, or farther from the consumer. Most of the farms in Singapore are pretty close, but let's say you're not in Singapore, you could have like a regular farm versus yours. You could have the level of technology or how year-round you are, etc. But basically, you want to find various factors that define these farms and then map them out onto this. And you want to see how are you similar or different from them, and how could you push that a little bit further. Maybe the locality is really important to your customer. Maybe the fact that it comes on the same day is very important. How can you push further on that? Are there ways that you can create more marketing about the fact that you are so fresh and local? Are there ways that you could change your distribution so that you can continue to commit to that and make that as part of your campaign? You can commit to that kind of locality. But basically, you need to understand your competitors a little bit better to differentiate from them. That's the first step. And then after that, again, I would find really authentic value propositions, right? Because when you're competing, you have to actually authentically deliver on that differentiation. So from there, I would try to find like, what are the authentic things you have? Maybe you are literally in the city center. That's an authentic advantage that you could leverage in a certain way. Maybe you grow a bigger variety than your competitors. Push further in that authentic competitive advantage and make sure that you leverage it to the maximum. Okay, we got a question for you, Timo, from Derek Smith, which is for the farm in Mexico, which sounds incredibly exciting. We did a project in Mexico many, many years ago. It's an interesting market, Mexico City. But for the farm in Mexico, how many acres is it going to be located on? I think is the question from Derek.
Oh, let me see now. I'm so much into the metric system. So acre is like what, half a hectare, right?
Yeah, approximately.
Yeah. So the farm, the building footprint itself is about 4 acres. But then the entire property where they are constructing this thing and they are building a lot of other stuff there, I think it's in total it's about 5 square kilometers, which is then what is it, 1,000 hectares? Sorry, 1,000 acres. Yeah.
So it's a very large. It's on the outside of the city, I assume, right?
Yeah. So it's really in the middle of nowhere. So it's a very, very big and a very, very long project. So I think it will take the next 12 years or something before the whole thing will be totally completed, because I think they have quite massive plans. I think it's all in all, it will be a $8 billion investment as a total for the whole
And it's
complex.
like a campus of agriculture types, or what is it exactly?
My understanding is that they will also construct different kind of hydrogen plants to create ammonia and desalination facilities and everything. So and they will build a city of 120,000 people or inhabitants just to have the employees for all these things. So it's a massive project, and they eat it like an elephant, so piece by piece.
Very exciting. Yeah, I think those master planning projects, those big mega projects, continue to pop up here and there around the world. I was reading about many in India. Got a big new project happening in Athens, Greece, redevelopment of the old airport. So some really cool things happening, and great opportunities to bring agritech into those projects, right? Because you've got people consuming food,
Right.
and you've got a redevelopment of urban spaces that give you the opportunity to make them more productive.
Yeah.
So definitely going to watch more of those.
And I think all in all, we see a lot of, let's say, polarization, that either the farms are actually getting smaller from the average size, or then you want to build something really big. But these, let's say, these kind of typical, let's say, 5,000 square feet farms, those are the ones that seem to be kind of be less in demand these days. It's either something very local, super compact, kind of shared farming things, or then it's something really kind of massive industrial size.
Yeah, I suppose I've noticed that difference as well a little bit. I'm every year sort of there's an ebb and flow in the demand and the kinds of farms people are building. But I wonder why that small category is still so interesting. I'm curious about that. So you still get quite a few requests for micro farms, so to say?
Yeah, I think there are some requests for micro farms, but then I think the key question there is, what is the sales model or the business model of these micro farms? Because they cannot compete head to head in the supermarket. So you have to have a totally different distribution tactic to kind of make your farm profitable, because just if you want to go head to head with prices per pound or something like that, you will not be competitive, no matter what is your kind of a marketing story behind the product. So it really boils down to the production costs that are very high the smaller your farm becomes. So then you need to find added value either in delivery, like delivering it to the doorstep like a milkman used to do in the old days, or something like that. So that gives you the pricing power.
Yeah, and that's part of the question related to differentiation. I was I'm in New York right now, and I was at Farm One, which was, we helped with their first facility, but they struggled during COVID, and then they got an investor, and they're back. So I visited their new and improved facility, which is really exciting. And they bring a lot of the customers to them, and they have workshops and experiences at the farm that really add value to the product, and then they deliver by bicycle to their customers. So again, that's another way that you can differentiate and make things work at that size. But I totally agree with you. You have to create a high value product and really stand out in that way.
And I don't know exactly what's the situation in the US, but I think if I look at it more from a global perspective, I think still the word vertical farming doesn't mean anything to consumers. So if you print it on a pack that's vertically farmed, they couldn't care less. So it really has to be, the benefits has to be the pesticide free, super fresh, super local, no need to rinse or wash or something like that. So I think I've seen many attempts to kind of use marketing around hydroponically grown or vertically farmed, and
consumers don't really care.
If you stop 100 people on the street, none of them will know what vertical farming actually is.
Yeah, exactly. So Francisco, to get back to you, so when we built Agritecture Designer, we were really focused on providing data that people could manipulate related to their region or their climate. The software automatically brings in climate conditions for greenhouses, for example, and you can override various parts of the modeling, including your input costs like labor, or tax rates or gas or energy or water. So we really wanted to build something where people could customize and contextualize how these farms typically perform, but in their markets. Now, as we did that, we said, okay, that's great. Like, people get a plan, that's awesome. But in the end, the farms need to get built. And so we saw that there was a lot of challenges that both people were facing when they reach out to suppliers, and also for the suppliers themselves. So in our investigation, we found that a lot of people were reaching out to suppliers when they weren't ready. So they basically reach out and they say, I want to build a vertical farm. How much does it cost and how much does it grow? And for iFarm, of course, not to speak for you, but they love getting customer requests, but they have to prioritize like any business. And I think when someone has done their market research, for example, and says, hey, iFarm, I want to grow this crop. This is the price I can sell it at. This is the amount I want to grow of this crop, and I want to grow the other 50% of my farm growing this crop. And I'm thinking about, this many levels in my space, and I'm thinking about using a reasonable medium amount of automation. Now, iFarm, ears perk up a little bit more, right? Because this customer is a little bit more educated, a little bit more prepared for the next discussions. Because what iFarm wants to do is they want to give a quote, a detailed quote. This is what it'll take. This is what it'll cost. This is what it will look like. This is how long it'll take to build. And that takes a lot of work from the suppliers like iFarm. So we said, well, maybe there's a way that we can be a bridge to improve the quality of this process. If there's 10 steps to a sale for iFarm, steps 1 through 4, 1 through 5 can be done in our software to build the business plan and to model that. And we feel it's really good for the people planning the farms as well, because they can ask smarter questions. They know what they're looking for, and they can shop for options. So we felt it was important that we had a range of options. So that's why we basically have a diversity of options, from turnkey solutions like iFarm to individual components of your farm. And we have a dedicated person as of January this year that will connect you with those suppliers and have those conversations. So again, we've listened to our customers that they need a bit more service as well to feel the confidence to make that request. And so that's our vision for it. Timo, do you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, just a kind of a very simple example that when you do a bit of this preparatory work, it gives you much better idea actually what you want to grow and what you want to sell. If I give you an example, let's assume you want to grow basil. One of the questions I would ask you anyway is that, how do you plan to sell it? Is it a full plant, or do you want to sell it as a cut? And then if you want to sell it as a cut, how big is the packaging? Because the packaging cost is a very big driver of your production costs. So if you have already figured those out, we can then know much better how much or how little space you will need for your packaging area of the greens, and also about a bit of the staffing and the packaging machinery and things like that you will need. And we will be able to give you much more precise estimate that how much your farm will be able to produce, because then we can use that space for growing instead of packaging and so on. So it will help us a lot the more you have done a bit of the thinking work before getting in touch. Of course, if you haven't, then we will do it with you, but in order to save time and money, I think it's a good to do a bit of a homework as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You got to know before you grow. And we see so many common mistakes in CEA, greenhouses, and vertical farms especially. And in my 10 years of doing this, people get very excited about the idea of being a vertical farmer and running these farms. I understand that. I've been doing this for over 10 years, so it's a big passion of mine. But you need to take a step back and really be practical. And it's hard to be practical when there's not a lot of available information at an affordable price that you can get to, that you can think about your unique context. So that's really exactly the problem I'm trying to solve. And without the partners, we can't solve that problem fully. And so we brought in multiple partners, and they go through a vetting process. So not anyone can just be a partner of Agritecture. They actually have to demonstrate that they have real projects that have been implemented. They have to demonstrate that they can deliver the customer service, and they have to demonstrate a certain amount of data related to that. So these are actually vetted partners that are within the platform, which I think adds a layer of trust for the users that are looking to shortlist the various options they have. And so we like to think that we have some of the best, if not the best, on our platform, and we continue to grow that and add some other ones. So stay tuned for more partners, including our new service partners that we updated. And I want to talk about that for a minute, Timo, because we have a lot of people using our software, and sometimes they have existing farms and they're planning new farms, or maybe sometimes they already know what equipment supplier they want to use. But your software, which is relatively new, although it's been used in a lot of farms, really relatively new in how you're talking about it, is that available to other operators that don't use your technology, or what's your approach there?
Yeah, so we actually have, let's say, two versions of the software. We have, let's say, GrowTune Full and GrowTune Lite. So the GrowTune Full contains the growth recipes and also the farm technical management. And this is unfortunately something that we cannot do for, let's say, other suppliers' hardware, because the irrigation may be a bit different, or some other parameters are different. So we cannot really.
Right.
I often use the example that, you know, it's like trying to repair a Mercedes using a BMW manual. So, you know, the manual is good, the car is good, but they just don't match. But for all the farms, we can still provide the production planning and the kind of the task prompter, and also the analytical tool, which will tell you how much waste you've created in the past quarter, or how much your capacity usage year to date has been compared to a year before, or how much you will be able to harvest in the next, 3 weeks from now, and how much of that is still to be sold to someone. So those things we can implement in every farm. Actually, we just signed a contract with a farm in Milan, Italy, where they actually use another technology, but then they use our software for the production planning. They are growing microgreens there, so we're doing those quite a bit, actually.
Okay, great. I just connected with a new farm in Milan, so I'm wondering if it's similar. But it's interesting to me that there's vertical farms being built in Italy. It's a good sign for the technology and for the market if it can work in Italy.
Yeah, but I think in countries like Spain, Italy, and so on, where the outdoor climate is so favorable, then you really have to focus on either microgreens, baby leaves, or some specific herbs. But then trying to just manage with lettuce, it's a bit more tough.
Yeah, you have to differentiate.
Yeah.
So we got a question from Matilda, which I think could go for both of us. What do you feel like your environmental impact has been, both positively and perhaps negatively? Do you want me to go first?
Well, you can go first.
I mean, I'm very conscious. Look, I think my approach to work and sustainability has been really not only what I can do, but how I can help others. So I'm trying to multiply my impact. And I feel passionately that there are several sustainability impacts to the localization of agriculture. However, controlled environment agriculture is not always lower carbon footprint, although it tends to have a lower water footprint and use less pesticides and less land. It does have a higher carbon footprint than field grown if it's powered by non-renewable sources, which many CEA farms are. And I talk pretty openly and extensively about that in articles, in events, as well as my LinkedIn. I try to guide the industry away from greenwashing. We came up with the idea of our company of building a marketing document so that companies could market what they're doing without greenwashing in this sector in particular. There's a lot of greenwashing related to food security or sustainability, et cetera. And I think what's exciting is that as there's been some decline in some of the businesses, have struggled, we are seeing that investors and journalists have matured a little bit in how they talk about vertical farming. It's much more common to hear people talk about the trade-offs of sustainability when it comes to vertical farming and what's needed from a renewable energy mix. For me personally, I'm very conscious of my flights because I'm a nomad and I travel the world. So I have a pretty high carbon footprint for my flights, and I do my best to offset those to the maximum amount possible, which doesn't solve the problem, but at least I get to contribute some money to carbon reduction projects around the world. And that's how I like to do that. So I think for me, it's about the legacy I'm trying to create through democratizing a lot of the data and access, as well as overall improving resilience. Again, I think that for me, like there's questions of what part of sustainability matters more to you. For example, do you care more about mitigation of climate change, or do you care more about adaptation, basically helping us be more resilient and adapt and do more with less in the future? And I think CEA really fits within the adaptation lens right now. In the short term, it increases carbon footprint, but in the longer term, there are certainly benefits to the overall food system and resilience of our society. So that's my answer to that interesting question. Timo, do you have any thoughts from iFarm?
Well, first of all, I fully agree with what you say about the greenwash, because I think every now and then we really do bump into all kind of claims from some dodgy suppliers, and I think there really needs to be a standardization of how to report yields and CO things and so on, so that everybody speaks the same language, because it's also the benefit of the farmers that they can really compare apples to apples. So that's one thing. Then when it comes to the positive and negatives, I think the negatives are very much up to the farmers themselves as well, because like Henry correctly pointed out, where the energy is coming from. As such, the farm itself doesn't care if it's solar power or if it's burning diesel, as long as it's get the kilowatt hours in. But then that makes a huge difference on the footprint, and the same thing also with your choice of substrates and packaging materials. Do you use pots or not? And those things always play a huge role, and it really can be quite ugly if the wrong choices are constantly made. I think on the positive side, it's if we have a lot of traction right now in Middle East, where there is areas where there's nothing growing, and the alternative is to keep flying to lettuce from Europe or from somewhere else. And if by building a vertical farm you can have at least a few planes less flying filled with just salads, I think that's always a positive thing. Plus the fact that in the vertical farming you don't have to use any kind of chemical pesticides, which are not very good for bumblebees and things like that in general. So I think those are the positive things. And just to jump on Deborah's question about because it's still on the sustainability and the carbon thing. So unfortunately today, no. So this is something where we are first of all waiting a bit of, let's say, some sort of a golden standard or standardization of this monitoring, so that everybody again would speak the same language. And then once that is more or less established, then we will add this kind of things into the software as well, because I think this kind of blockchain technology, for example, it will come more and more into green, so you will know where it's been, where it has been grown and when and everything. So I think it's going to be then part of that, because you will need that in order to track the real carbon footprint, because the pollution doesn't end when the greens leave the farm, because there is still the supply chain to the store, and then the store energy uses and things like that. So it's quite a complex computation.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those thoughts. Well, I'd like to again open it up to any other questions, whether like to be communicated in the chat or verbally. You can raise your hand and I can allow you to talk if you're interested in that. It was pretty cool to hear from Derek, who's planning a farm, 23 acres possible. So that sounds like an interesting opportunity. And Derek, definitely, I don't know if you're thinking about vertical farming or greenhouses or both, but be interested to hear more about that project whenever you're ready. So Timo, what's your travel schedule? I mean, you must go and visit a lot of these farms. Where are you going next?
Actually, I don't travel that much. So I'm more like glued onto my chair. I'm fortunate enough to have some colleagues who then will do the footwork in many occasions, but I think I will actually next visit Austria, Vienna in Austria, maybe in early June. So I do not travel that much, actually. I try to keep my my kind of carbon footprint as low as possible by staying in my home basement, like right now.
That's good. That's good. I like that a lot. Earl, you're definitely welcome to reach out to iFarm directly. If you mention Agritecture, you may get some preferred rates. And if you are a subscriber to our software, you get the additional value of Luke assisting you with that process. So again, we're here to answer questions, but really want to encourage you, if you have not yet, to sign up for a 7-day free trial to Agritecture Designer. You get to test out the features, you get to see what's up and start to play with your first model and take some of the first classes. So it's a great chance to test the software, see what the fit is for you. And then as part of that subscription, you get the benefit of the Agritecture team supporting you. But of course, we're happy that people contact iFarm. They're a partner of ours. We want them to have all the success in the world. But other things to make you aware of, again, if you're looking for consulting services, you can check that out on our Agritecture page, agritecture.com, and see the range there. We do have an on-demand service, which is called Ask Agritecture, where you can book us for 30 minutes at a reduced rate, just to ask a specific question that you have, or maybe a couple questions. And again, that's another way we're trying to help guide people. We really want people to be moving forward as efficiently as possible. So I hope that answers your question, Earl, but you're welcome to reach out to either of us is the short answer there. Yes, you're welcome. Appreciate all of you for joining in the webinar today. Are there any more questions today? Anything anyone else wants to know? Well, we certainly appreciate your participation. You can see me and a lot of the Agritecture team at Green Tech happening June 13th through 15th in Amsterdam. Green Tech is a very exciting event. If you're serious about the sector, it's a great event to meet. Basically, most of the people in the industry go to this. Is by far the biggest. And so I invite you to go there if you want to. You can find more about it on our Agritecture website. And I definitely would be happy to see you there. And I'm going to be hosting the vision stage. So there's going to be lots of talks that I'm going to be moderating. Richard, do you have a question here? Let's see. We're going to have our first participants.
Richard asks about AI and Grow2 software. So, the answer in brief is that if you want, but on the other hand, we do not recommend it, because the principle of our farms, and I think the principle of every vertical farm, is that all the parameters are fully controlled and controllable. So you should be able to replicate the exact same growing conditions practically anywhere in the world. So if the recipe developed by AI in one place works, then you only need to just transfer that recipe into your location and it will work, if you can control all the parameters. So these kind of machine visions, we actually had some drones flying in our farms at one point in the R&D farms, but it was more like a hazard when someone is on the scissor lift, 15 feet high, and there is a drone coming in taking some pictures. So it's something that we can do, but that doesn't really add value. It only adds cost to you. But if you insist, we will do it.
I like that. Flexible, but focused on the economics.
Yeah, and I think it's really, really important to keep in mind in general when it comes to anything, more or less any aspect of vertical farming, is that you can have, let's say, two avenues or two principles how you want to build your farm. You can either want to maximize your crops, or then you may want to optimize your production. Maximizing your crops means that you will use and buy the top-notch equipment in every aspect, but that will then take your capex and potentially also opex through the roof. Or then you can try to optimize and kind of settle with a slightly less productivity, but then much less capex in your operation. So there is always this kind of a sweet spot where you spend just enough to get good enough results. It's not always the smartest thing to go for the highest yields in every situation, because then that tends to kind of really damage your capex quite a bit.
Yeah, and running those scenarios and those trade-offs is going to be important. You can do a little bit of that on AD, and then again, you can do that as we're working together
Correct.
on customizing your farm through the quote process. That was a good explanation, Timo. Thank you for that. Well, if there's no further questions, I'm going to wrap up the webinar early. And again, we really want to thank Timo who stayed up late for this. So thank you. Big virtual round of applause for you. Appreciate it. You've had a long day.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining in, and appreciate all of you. If you have any questions for us, you can also reach out to us for sure, and continue to follow. We have these webinars every 2 weeks where you can ask us anything, and we will do our best to guide you. Again, I invite all of you, if you haven't yet, to try Agritecture Designer, free trial, 7 days. Give it a try. You can estimate the CapEx, OpEx, yield, do your market research, explore suppliers, and learn the best practices through our online classes. So it's an investment that will definitely have a significant ROI. So wishing you all the best. Thank you so much for joining today's Agritecture webinar, and thank you, Timo. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.